Lake Haven Chrysalis is a wonderful retro-style horror game heavily inspired by Silent Hill and Twin Peaks. At the time of recording, it has just over 140 ratings, 99% of them being positive. What did the developers do to achieve this, and what makes the game so good? In this video, I will break down the game design and explain how to achieve 99% positive reviews as an indie game dev. At the very start of Lake Haven Chrysalis, I was surprised to see that it has no tutorial at all. After a short cutscene, I'm left without even a button prompt on how to move my character. Most modern games help the player by teaching them the very basics, either through a button prompt or a document. Developers do this because they want their game to be easily accessible to players of all skill levels. Lake Haven, however, boldly decides against this. How to move your character is obvious though, right? I don't need a button prompt for that. I can also just pause the game and look at the controls. Lake Haven takes this no tutorial thing a bit farther though. I'm walking up to this mailbox now. Inside it are letters that I can read. Being as this is the first possible interaction in the game, surely it will give me a button prompt that I can interact with the mailbox, right? Instead, press E to check does not appear on screen. The item inside the mailbox isn't even shining like it might be in other games. What we are observing here are techniques of immersion. Anything that could remind you that you're playing a game is missing. This is almost a form of diegetic UI, where typical UI elements like health and ammo are made to look like part of the environment. I can't quite say that this is diegetic UI though, because there just is no UI. Games are simply just an experience. As a game designer, your job is to immerse the player in that experience you are trying to create. This especially rings true when you're making a horror game. How are you supposed to be scared and uneasy if you're constantly reminded that this is just a game? When survival horror games first appeared, there were no button prompts on screen. Collectible items almost never flashed, and sometimes the items were completely hidden from view. Environmental interactions did not stand out in any way at all. Resident Evil even used pre-rendered backgrounds to make the game look as photorealistic as possible. Other than a few exceptions, these horror games did everything they could to immerse you in the experience. Companies obviously wanted to increase their profits by selling more copies of their games. One of the ways to do this was to make their games more accessible for players. From Capcom, we started to see things like forced instruction manuals. Items you could pick up were more obvious, floating comically in the air. Slowly, immersion was no longer the priority. Accessibility was more important. However, Team Silent from Konami continued to prioritize immersion in the Silent Hill series. All the way to Silent Hill 4, there were still no button prompts, flashing items, or playing manuals. But sometime around 2007, Konami lost faith in Team Silent. Production of Silent Hill 5 was handed to another studio, and Team Silent was no more. I can't say for sure, but I think prioritizing immersion over accessibility was probably the culprit here. Now comes Lake Haven. Just like the legendary Team Silent, the developers have chosen to prioritize immersion over accessibility. Their main focus is to fully immerse the player in the experience and world that they have created, and this leaves a very unique experience that is rare to come by these days. Now, I want to make it clear that accessibility is not some kind of enemy that kills immersion in gaming. I think it's wonderful when more people can experience a game. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen is the accessibility mode in The Last of Us Part 1 remake, where even visually impaired people can play the game. Maybe it's just my nostalgia, but I really think that removing all accessibility from a game creates a much different experience, and I find that experience more enjoyable. My game design advice here is to take note of what Silent Hill and Lake Haven have done. If you are making a horror game right now, Add an accessibility option to turn off all button prompts, flashing items, and playing manuals. Give players the option of immersion. Moving away from the immersion aspect of Lake Haven, the lack of button prompts are also getting the player in this mindset of experimentation. You don't know if you can interact with something until you try. You don't know if two items can be combined until you make the attempt. Let's call this game design technique Eureka. Eureka is defined as a cry of joy or satisfaction when one finds or discovers something. Players love moments of discovery. Phoenix Wright is a great non-horror example of an entire game series built around this Eureka mechanic. You play as a defense attorney trying to prove the innocence of your client by picking apart testimonies with conflicting evidence you've found. While Phoenix Wright is screaming objection, the player is screaming Eureka because they just unraveled another part of the mystery and are one step closer to figuring out the story of what actually happened. Let's take a deeper look into Lake Haven's Eureka moments in the flowchart I've made. You can find this flowchart in the video description below. After exploring this flowchart, I've separated each Eureka moment into 3 separate categories: simple, medium, and hard. A simple Eureka moment is when there is a single connection on the flowchart. Figuring out that the heavy iron key should be used on the front door, or figuring out the shovel should be used on the dirt, are both examples of simple Eureka moments. There are a total of 13 simple Eureka moments. A medium Eureka moment means that there are 2 connections on the flowchart. This means that the player gets stuck and cannot progress until they complete a different Eureka moment. Interacting with the poppy painting does nothing at first. However, interacting with it while having the dried poppy in your inventory reveals a button the player can press. Another example is the toolbox in the basement entrance. Figuring out that the small key goes to the toolbox sounds simple, but you cannot collect the small key until using the shovel on the dirt. That makes this a medium Eureka moment. There are a total of 7 medium Eureka moments in Lake Haven. A hard Eureka moment means that there are more than 2 connections on the flowchart. There is only one of these moments in Lake Haven, and that moment is the safe in the attic. After gaining access to the attic, you are tasked with inputting a combination on a safe to open it. But what is the combination? The numbers of the combination are shown on a painting in the bedroom, but what order do they go in? The order can be deciphered from a Bible passage in the storage room, but you might have to go look at the painting again. When the player reaches the safe, it is not guaranteed that they've even noticed the Bible passage or painting. Even if they have seen these, the information is not fresh in their mind. The player gets this exciting moment where they run back to the painting and then back to the Bible passage. They'll probably be repeating numbers out loud while rushing to the safe. This results in a very memorable and rewarding experience. You do not get this same feeling from using the shovel on the dirt. So, you might be wondering, why weren't there more hard Eureka moments like this? Why only one? Making your game too difficult can leave players feeling frustrated. When I reached this safe, I struggled to put the numbers in the correct order. I actually misread the painting at first and had the wrong numbers for a while. I was also wondering if I had the correct combination, but was just using the lock incorrectly. This caused me to input the wrong solution multiple times. What I'm trying to say here is to keep your game simple. Challenge your players when the time is right. If every puzzle was a hard Eureka moment, it would result in a frustrated player rather than an excited and engaged one. I am positive that having a Eureka moment with more than 3 connections on the flowchart, or having 2 hard Eureka moments simultaneously, would result in some players getting so frustrated that they give up and quit the game. In total, there are 21 Eureka moments in Lake Haven Chrysalis. Encrypt games balanced the difficulty of these moments perfectly. Even at the end, right after solving this hard eureka moment with the safe, the game's difficulty quickly decreases to give the player a nice break from using their brain. While there are a couple medium eureka moments left, it's pretty much a straight path to the end. I left out some very important optional eureka moments though. Those come in the form of diary entries found. Each one explains a bit more of the story and helps players understand what might have happened to Eleanor. As you read these diary entries, you start to piece together a timeline. Keep in mind that the player is immersed, and the reason they are even playing is to discover what happened to Eleanor. These eureka moments would be nothing without a story to unfold. There are also a few Easter egg eureka moments that I have to mention, as I feel these truly add to the success of the game. These Easter eggs were intentionally added to mimic the classic horror games of the past. If you've played Silent Hill 1, you probably know about the UFO ending.
Have you seen a little girl around here? Short, black hair.
You might know about the dog ending in Silent Hill 2, even if you haven't played it. While Lake Haven Chrysalis doesn't have an alternate ending, they still have a secret to discover that Silent Hill fans will love. The developers knew who their target audience was and what they expected in a horror game. More important than the Easter eggs are the wonderfully crafted camera angles, visuals, and sound design. The camera angle that I remember most is the fight with Eleanor. The room becomes twisted, forcing you to fight instead of run. It leaves you wondering, has the environment actually changed, or is this just a way of communicating Zeke's internal thoughts to the player? The small details of music and sounds subtly changing as you progress in the game is very important to the game's atmosphere. The nature documentary on TV gets more and more demonic sounding. Eventually, it's randomly turned off, leaving an eerie silence. As you roam around outside, the ambient noises of the night get an eerie shrieking sound added to them. It's clear that the developers paid close attention to what made classic horror so great and added a bit of their own flair into the mix. Lake Haven Chrysalis keeps the player immersed at all times. The difficulty is carefully balanced to challenge you and keep frustration to a minimum. An eerie atmosphere with an intriguing mystery keeps the player interested. Encrypt Games knows their target audience well and goes above and beyond to make sure those players get the experience that they are expecting. That's how Lake Haven Chrysalis has achieved 99% positive ratings on Steam. If you are an indie dev and have a horror game on Steam, please reach out to me. I would love to break your game down no matter how good or bad the reviews. My goal is to help everyone make better horror and shed some light on the less discussed topic of game design. Please like and subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks for watching.